Am I the antagonist for choosing my son's friends over family? I have a 16-year-old son named Nate. He has been friends with a group of 5 boys, including him, since they were about 8 years old. We are of white ethnicity, and 2 of the other boys are also white, while one is Middle Eastern and another is South Asian. This information is relevant. On Thanksgiving, I always invite the 2 non-white boys to celebrate with us since they don't traditionally celebrate the holiday. They usually come, and it's always a great time, especially for Nate, as his cousins are either much older or much younger. As usual, I invited them this year and they both came. My mom also brought her new boyfriend, whom I had met before and seemed fine. However, upon seeing the boys in the living room, he immediately said, "Now I know those 2 young men aren't yours." I explained to him that they are Nate's friends. He whispered something to my mom, but she just walked away, ignoring him. I brushed it off and left to attend to something else. About 20 minutes later, Nate came up to me and said that my grandma's boyfriend was acting strangely. I went to investigate and found him interrogating the other boys about their true intentions with Nate and our family. One of the boys jokingly replied, "Damn, you caught us," which set him off. I stepped in and took him to the kitchen where I firmly told him to leave. He had been exhibiting racist behavior, and I knew from experience that giving him another chance would only lead to more hurtful comments in the future. Moreover, I value the boy's well-being more than I care about him. He called my mom over and she pleaded with me to give him another chance, promising to make sure he keeps his mouth shut. However, I stood my ground and expressed my lack of concern. This upset my mom greatly, and she told me that if he leaves, she will leave too. I hesitated, but ultimately decided that she could leave as well. My decision did not sit well with my mom, who claimed her boyfriend was merely saying what they all were thinking, and that it was about time these boys stopped infiltrating our family time. They left, and I remained confident in my decision until one aunt and her daughters voiced their agreement, stating that it's true that they, and others, don't appreciate the presence of these 2 boys during every Thanksgiving and sometimes Christmas. They found it suspicious, but they claimed it wasn't about race. They criticized me for choosing random teenage boys over family, but I shut them down by stating that they were welcome to leave as well. They fell silent after that. I'm not sure if I am in the wrong here, but evidently, many of my family members share this sentiment. Am I the asshole for choosing these boys over my family? My mom refuses to talk to me now. You were absolutely right to stand up for your son's friends and kick out your mom's racist boyfriend. It is commendable that you prioritize the well-being and comfort of these boys over family ties. Racism has no place in any family gathering, and it is important to create a safe and inclusive environment for everyone. Your mom's reaction and the comments from your aunt and cousins further highlight their own prejudices, and it's disappointing that they are not supportive. You made the right decision, and you should continue standing up for what is right. Am I the antagonist for losing my temper with my parents and sister and telling them she should just take everything I have, including my clothes, since she deserves it all so much? I'm a 16-year-old male, and I have a 14-year-old sister. When my sister was 6, she was diagnosed with a rare form of leukemia and needed ongoing medical attention for 5 years. However, she has been healthy for the last 3 years and has returned to a normal lifestyle. During my sister's illness, my parents neglected me, and I felt like they were not there for me. I was either passed around to different family members or left alone. There were a few years when they forgot my birthday and Christmas became all about my sister. I was asked to put in the effort to make sure she had all the gifts and joy she could get, as it could have potentially been her last Christmas. It made me really unhappy, and I felt like I was only there as a prop to try and cheer her up at times. Whenever she asked for something, my parents would do everything possible to get it for her, even if it meant taking away something that belonged to me. For example, before she got sick, my parents had bought me an expensive beanbag chair for my room, but they gave it to her instead. If I brought home a treat from school, they would tell me to give it to my sister to cheer her up, and sometimes she would even ask for it herself. When I didn't bring something home for a while, they would question me as if I had committed a crime. For a few years after my sister's illness, we went to see Santa Claus, and every time, I would receive a lesser and cheaper toy that we would swap, so I couldn't have something slightly nicer than her. This often resulted in me getting stuck with jewelry-making kits or sparkly pink stationery kits. During the last Christmas, while my sister received a new phone and Switch skin, I only received clothes. In June, I turned 16, and I had been saving my wages for a long time to buy a gaming laptop. It meant a lot to me, and my 2 best friends decided not to buy me anything, and instead gave me money to help me purchase it. They even accompanied me when I went to pick it up. Last week, when I came home from school, my parents and sister were in the living room. They told me that my sister wanted to play computer games with her friends, and since I already had a gaming laptop, they suggested that I could give it to her instead of buying a new one. When I didn't respond immediately, they casually added that I could always share it with her. I couldn't control my emotions and I started yelling and cursing. I told them that of course she should have it and why not. I even sarcastically suggested they should take everything I own, including my clothes and bed, and give it all to her. I pointed out that she already had a new bed while mine was 12 years old. I told them to take everything since she deserves it all, while I don't deserve anything for not being sick as a child. My sister remained silent throughout, and my parents were initially shocked but quickly became angry with me. They asked me why I was behaving like that. Since then, things have been tense at home. However, I still have my laptop. It is not fair for your parents to expect you to give up your newly purchased gaming laptop for your sister's convenience. Your outburst may have been a result of built-up frustration, and it is important for your parents to understand your emotions and address the imbalance in attention and support. Am I the antagonist for not stopping someone from using my skincare? I recently received a diagnosis of autism at the age of 29. I am highly functional, although I struggle with unmasking, and am currently trying to learn how to do so. It is quite easy for others to take advantage of me, and though I'm working on it, progress is slow. Every Saturday, my husband hosts a Dungeons & Dragons D&D game. While I'm not interested in participating, I help prepare everything before the guests arrive. After briefly greeting everyone, I retreat to the upstairs area. Saturday nights are my designated self-care time, where I take baths, do face masks, and organize my planner. One of my husband's friends, John, has a new girlfriend named Jane, likely around 24 years old. I do not enjoy spending time with her, not because there is anything wrong with her, but because her personality tends to overpower mine. Jane interrupts me frequently, grabs my arm, and tends to be quite loud. It can be overwhelming for me. This weekend, I greeted most of my husband's friends and went upstairs before the remaining guests arrived. While I was starting my skincare routine, Jane unexpectedly appeared in my bathroom. Apparently, John had told her that I am always doing nothing while they play, and he thought I could use some company. Although I didn't want company, I politely told her that I wanted to finish what I was doing and then we could find something else to do together. I follow a complex Korean-style skincare routine with multiple steps and products. Jane immediately went straight to my vanity and began enthusiastically commenting on it. She started picking things up and moving them around, mentioning how she had seen some of them on TikTok and expressing her curiosity. Despite my attempts to ask her not to touch anything, she didn't seem to hear me and kept talking over me. She asked about various products, what they were like, and what my thoughts were on them. She even started opening containers, sticking her fingers in them, and applying them directly to her face. I was becoming increasingly anxious, knowing that if I expressed my true feelings, I would likely just blurt out, "Stop it! Go away!" and maybe even cry. So instead, I stayed quiet and let her continue. I witnessed her combining active ingredients, a very bad idea, and using them on her face, but I didn't intervene because I didn't want to have a breakdown in front of someone I barely knew. She mentioned that it was stinging a bit, but she didn't wash it off, and I didn't tell her to either. Eventually, I managed to get her out of my bathroom and suggested watching a movie together so we wouldn't have to talk. I was still upset even after she left, and my husband apologized to me. He had been occupied with something when he saw her heading upstairs, so he didn't want to create a scene. However, he promised that such a situation wouldn't happen again without prior preparation on my part. On Sunday morning, we received an angry phone call from Jane and John. Jane's skin had reacted poorly to the products, resulting in severe breakouts, redness, and sensitivity. I explained that it was because she had used my active ingredients and advised her to be diligent about using sunscreen to avoid making it worse. However, she became furious and demanded to know why I didn't stop her if I knew what would happen. Unsure of how to respond, I allowed her to vent her anger until my husband ended the call. I feel guilty about the whole situation. I didn't want her to witness me in a vulnerable state, but I knew it would be painful for her, and yet I chose to prioritize myself. Now I can't help but feel that my decision was wrong. You clearly communicated to Jane that you wanted to finish what you were doing before spending time with her, and she disregarded your boundaries by entering your personal space and touching your belongings without permission. It is not your responsibility to manage her actions or prevent her from using your skincare products incorrectly. Additionally, it's important to prioritize your own self-care and well-being, especially since you mentioned that social interactions can be overwhelming for you. Your husband should have intervened and respected your boundaries as well. It is not your fault that Jane had a negative reaction to the products she used, as she made the decision to use them without fully understanding their effects. You have nothing to feel guilty about in this situation. Am I the antagonist for telling my husband the inheritance we're getting from my grandparents should go to my sister's kids if anything happens to me? I, 31-year-old female, recently inherited a significant amount of money after my grandmother passed away last month. We are currently working on sorting out the details regarding taxes, retirement, and other related matters. To provide some context, both my parents and grandparents were owners of successful companies, and they made my husband, 33-year-old male, sign a prenuptial agreement when we got married. Initially, my husband was okay with it, and for the most part, he still is. However, things have gotten a bit complicated now that we are starting to receive some of the money from my grandmother's estate. We don't have children yet and are undecided about whether we want them in the future. On the other hand, my sister has twin boys whom I love dearly, and I share a close bond with her. However, my relationship with the rest of my family is not as strong. My husband has 3 nephews and 2 nieces from his side of the family, and I am not particularly close to any of them. We get along, but I wouldn't consider us to be very tight-knit. Recently, we were discussing our wills to ensure that everything is in order in case something happens to us. During the conversation, I mentioned that despite having a prenuptial agreement, I would like to find a way for my husband to receive as much of the inheritance as possible. Additionally, I expressed a desire to allocate a portion of the money to my sister's boys and any other children she may have in the future, for their education or purchasing a house. My husband became distant and raised concerns about his own side of the family. He mentioned that it wouldn't be entirely fair to exclude them from any inheritance. Although I understood his perspective, I explained that we aren't particularly close with his family, and this money was primarily intended for my own family. He accused me of selfishness for not including them, but he also acknowledged that he understood where I was coming from. Lately, he has been making comments about the perceived unfairness, and now I'm starting to doubt myself and wonder if I'm being inconsiderate. I'm not sure if I am in the wrong here. I should review the prenuptial agreement. I do know that the main purpose of it was to ensure that my share of the family business remains within the family. I recall there being a clause that disallows him from inheriting any shares, even in the event of my death. My parents mentioned the existence of another trust set aside for me, but I'm unsure about its terms. In the unfortunate case of my death prior to receiving that trust, my husband would not receive any money from it. This is why I'm trying my best to find a way around it. It's worth noting that my sister, along with all the other grandchildren, also received a significant inheritance from our grandparents. Once again, I want to emphasize that my intention is to leave the majority of the money to my husband and allocate some to my nephews. We are still in the early stages of addressing these matters, so I apologize for not having many specifics at the moment. It is understandable that you would want to prioritize your sister's children, whom you have a close relationship with, when considering the inheritance. You have made it clear that you still want to leave the bulk of the money to your husband, which shows that you do value his well-being. The fact that your husband is making comments about fairness and expressing dissatisfaction with not including his side of the family is a valid concern that should be addressed. But it does not make you selfish for wanting to prioritize your sister's children. It is important for both of you to have open and honest conversations about your individual desires and expectations regarding the inheritance. It may also be worth revisiting the terms of the prenuptial agreement to understand the implications it has on your current situation. Ultimately, finding a compromise or a solution that takes into consideration the needs and desires of both you and your husband is crucial. Open communication, empathy, and respect for each other's perspectives can help navigate this delicate situation. Am I the antagonist for telling my husband to let the stepkids stay at boarding school? I have been with my husband for 4 years, and we have been married for 1 year. He has 3 children from his previous marriage. Their relationship with their father has been strained due to the bitter divorce between him and his ex-wife. She took the children and left the country, resulting in a lot of parental alienation. Currently, the children live in a boarding school in their home country. They visit their mother on weekends and spend holidays with us. The children's ages are 16, 15, and 12. Unfortunately, 4 months ago, their mother passed away. As a result, my husband now has full custody and wants to move the children back once this semester ends. However, the children are comfortable in their boarding school and have their maternal family there as well. They even asked their maternal grandparents to fight for custody, but they don't have the means to do so. Despite their reluctance, my husband is determined to move them. I expressed my concerns, stating that after losing their mother, it's not wise to separate them from their only support system. The boarding school has been their home for most of their lives, and uprooting them now would be cruel. I suggested taking this transition more slowly, or even moving to their home country to be closer to them. I work remotely and my husband can relocate his job. However, my husband became furious and accused me of being an evil stepmom who hates the children. He even mentioned reconsidering our marriage. I'm at a loss for what to do. My only intention is to prioritize the children's well-being. They currently reside in Northern Europe while we live in the US. I dislike the schools here, not to mention that all their extended family is back in their home country. I genuinely believe that this sudden change would not sit well with them and may only further alienate them. Am I the antagonist? Am I the antagonist? Edit. I feel it's important to mention that the main reason my husband doesn't want to move back is due to his ex-wife's family. His parents and Laura, his ex-wife, were best friends, so my husband and Laura grew up together. They started dating at 19. Unfortunately, my husband lost both his parents at the age of 20, and Laura's family provided him with support throughout university. When Laura became pregnant with their youngest child, she expressed interest in moving to the US, and they did so with her family's assistance. However, when the youngest child turned 1, a man approached my husband, claiming to be the possible father. It turned out that Laura had been having an affair for 2 years, and her entire family was aware of it. This is the reason they wanted to move to the US, as Laura herself didn't know who the father was, and the man requested a paternity test. To summarize, the test confirmed that my husband was the father. Laura moved back to their home country, with financial support from her family, and my husband was left alone in the US. Since then, he has had no contact with their family, but moving back would mean regular interaction with them. These were individuals he considered his second parents, and Laura's siblings were like siblings to him as well. It seems like you genuinely have the best interests of the children at heart and are considering their emotional well-being. Moving them immediately after the loss of their mother could be very traumatic for them. It's important to take their feelings and preferences into account, especially given their already strained relationship with their father. It might be worth exploring other options, such as moving closer to their boarding school in order to maintain their stability and connection with their maternal family. Your suggestions of taking things slowly or moving to be near them are reasonable compromises. Your husband's reaction and accusations seem unfair, and it's important to have open and understanding communication with him to find a solution that works for everyone involved. Am I the antagonist for telling my mom about my husband's actions while he was blacked out? Some background. My husband, 32-year-old male, and I, 30-year-old female, went to a wedding in another state a few weeks ago. He got very drunk and blacked out because he was taking advantage of the open bar. There was a couple sitting next to us at the assigned table, and the woman was equally as drunk. The two spent the night giggling and whispering in each other's ears. They had never met before, we don't even remember her name, and at one point my husband's face was dangerously close to her cleavage. All while I was sitting right next to them, by the way. Also, my cleavage looked fabulous that day, so, hello, maybe look at your wife. Anyway, I kept asking him to leave and go back to the hotel room, and others came up to me like, LOL, your husband is very drunk, dude. Check him, and it was extremely embarrassing. He kept refusing. Eventually, I poured him into an Uber and spent the entire night taking care of him while he threw up. The next day, I drove us home while he continued throwing up into a bag in the car. He remembers none of the events from that night. I don't think it was cheating exactly, but it did cross a physical boundary. I didn't plan to bring it up, given how drunk he was, but he snapped at me over something minor. I thought he turned off subtitles on the TV when he hadn't, and I just couldn't hold it in anymore, like, yeah, well, I didn't do what you did. Then the whole thing came out and I had pictures, but he didn't want to see them and insisted I delete them. Now I wish I hadn't. He was very sorry, said he had to reconsider everything he thought about himself, swore off drinking, etc. I said fine, but it's going to take me time to come to terms with it, even if I know it was because you were disgustingly drunk. Note, he does not get that drunk regularly. It's very rare, and I've never seen it to that extent in the 4 years I've known him. I talked about it to my therapist, which I told him beforehand I would, but I might have messed up today because I went onto the balcony and told my mom about it, but he overheard because I misjudged my volume. I just needed to vent to my mom, but I see how it seems like a betrayal to him. My mom is not an interfering crazy mother-in-law. In fact, she told me to make peace with it since that's what I said I'd do, but he'll be worried that she sees him differently now. My opinion is, if there was no incident, then there wouldn't be anything for me to talk about, right? But I think this is the kind of thing maybe I should have kept quiet from my family if I truly planned to move on from it. It's hard to stay silent about something that I haven't moved past, even if the plan is to move past it in the future. I was having a very difficult time at work, and while pouring out my troubles to my mom, this also came pouring out too. Your husband's behavior at the wedding was inappropriate and crossed a boundary, even if it didn't constitute cheating. It's understandable that you felt embarrassed and upset by his actions. While it's good that your husband has expressed remorse and is taking steps to address his excessive drinking, it's also natural for you to need time to reconcile your feelings and rebuild trust. It's important to communicate openly with each other and seek therapy to work through the aftermath of this incident. As for sharing the situation with your therapist and your mom, it's understandable that you needed to vent and seek support. However, it's worth considering how your husband might perceive this as a betrayal and be concerned about how your family sees him now. Moving forward, it might be beneficial to discuss with your husband the boundaries around sharing personal matters with others, as well as finding healthier ways to cope with stress and navigate difficult situations together. Thanks for watching. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist in the description.